Max on Step 11.
Good morning. My name is Kent Coleman. I'm an alcoholic. And right off the rip, my sobriety date is May 18th, 1992. I have a sponsor. He's sitting right down here. I have a home group. I have commitments in Alcoholics Anonymous. I sponsor men in Alcoholics Anonymous. And not only listening to Billy's talk last night, I'm a guy that after we go through the steps, I go through the traditions with them, and I go through the concepts with them. Right now, I got 2 guys in the concepts, and I got 2 guys in the traditions. As a sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous, it is my responsibility to send my sponsees to a home group with an understanding of where it came from, why we do what we do, and what we need to continue to do to continue to grow and to thrive in Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, it's really, really easy to sit around and identify the problems in AA, right? My first sponsor used to say, when we get back to good sponsorship, right, all this stuff will get better. And then I would say, yeah, that's right. And then he would look at me and say, what are you going to do to make that happen? See, it's real easy to know what the problem is. I want to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. I want to thank the Stateline committee, as always, for your kindness and hospitality to Janelle and myself. We've had a wonderful weekend. This has been a veritable feast of Alcoholics Anonymous, at least up to now. Anyway, the speakers that we've enjoyed here this weekend are, with the exception of my new friend Max over here, are people that I've known through the years. And it's really cool because Billy talked about it some last night. You hear people all the time, and you hear them a lot, and you listen to them on CDs and all that. But we never stay all the same. A lot of the story stays the same, right? If you don't drink again, your drunk story is your drunk story, right? But God has a way of pulling things out of people sometime that they didn't even know they were going to talk about, right? And so it's just, it's been an enriching and fulfilling weekend. I'm like the little boy who came home from his first day of school, and his daddy met him at the front door, and he said, well, son, did you learn anything? The little boy said, apparently not. They told me I had to come back tomorrow, right? And that's the way it's been for me at Alcoholics Anonymous. I just keep coming back tomorrow. There was a guy in my home group when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. His name was John C. John got sober in 1944. When he died, he was 57 years sober. And John would share at the meetings what he learned tonight. This is what I learned tonight, right? And I was brand new, but I caught that. And I was like, wow, like this is completely open-ended. There's no end game here. We're not passing out diplomas, certificates of achievement in here. There's no top rung of the ladder in here. Each day that I'm open to learn and to grow, right, I can get closer to this power, because that's really what we're here to talk about this morning, right? It's getting closer to this power. I've been asked to speak this morning about the 11 steps sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. I got to tell y'all something, because somebody mentioned enthusiasm yesterday. And my first sponsor was big on enthusiasm. I told him one day, I said, a lady came up to me after a meeting and said, you have a lot of enthusiasm for Alcoholics Anonymous. I had no idea what that meant. So I went to my sponsor and I said, this lady said I got a lot of enthusiasm for Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, look it up in the dictionary, college boy. That's what he used to call me. So I looked it up and I called him. He said, what does it say? I said, it's from the Greek entheos, which means the God within. He said, that is absolutely correct. Enthusiasm is a manifestation of the presence of God in your life. And if you ever lose your enthusiasm for Alcoholics Anonymous, you have a spiritual issue and it must be tended to immediately. I have more enthusiasm. I am more excited today to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous than at any other time. I believe that Alcoholics Anonymous is growing. It's thriving. Alcoholics Anonymous has some issues. It always has. Read our history. It always has, right? But we have a loving God who expresses himself on our group conscience, right? And we got the steps which flow into the traditions, which flow into the concepts, an impenetrable defense, not only against the first drink, but against the human ego. So it's just, I'm excited to talk about Step 11 because, man, if you've been listening here all weekend, it's been some pretty rough going, haven't it, right? We've heard talk about, right, this obsession of the mind. We've heard talk about the allergy of the body. We've heard a lot of talk about the spiritual malady in here, right? That thing in me that seems to always feel inadequate. That thing in me that always refuses to believe, even in the face of absolute certainty that God is and that God is doing for me and has been doing for me, right? And I can come to y'all and I go to a meeting and say, wow, the grace of God just showed up in my life, right? Look what just happened. You know, and it's undeniable. When that happens, it's things that are outside of our power, and we see this stuff happening. Then I go home, lay down, turn the light off, and say, oh my God, am I gonna have enough money to pay the light bill tomorrow? Right? And then, right, I'd be like, uh-oh, I'm supposed to trust God, but just in case, right? And so now I will resort to self-preservation. And then I'll start trying to play God, control what's going on around me, place myself in a position to be hurt later on, right? And then get resentful about it when I do, right? And it's just this thing that I live in. And I'll tell you, I wish I could stand here today and say, I now trust God 24 hours a day in all things, and lightning would strike me as I stood here, right? Because a lot of times this stuff happens. Why do it happen? I'm going to tell you the truth. Because I don't trust God enough. With all that God has done for me, I shouldn't even be standing here. A lot of this is the best looking room of dead people I've ever seen in my life. Right? Shouldn't even be here. Just listen to the stories in here, right? I died in 1984. Here I stand. And I did. But here I stand. Look at all I believe it was Marilyn who started talking about the things that happened. Marilyn going to a meeting and she told that lady, do you know, was it Marion? Do you know me, right? Out of all the people in Alcoholics Anonymous in Southern California, right? Come on. How many times have we seen all that stuff used to happen to me? I would have stuff going on with me when I was new, I wouldn't ask for help. I wouldn't tell anybody, right? Because I'm still full of me. I didn't come in here and automatically just, whoosh, I've had a spiritual awakening and now I'm ready to help you, right? Everything is different. I see life different. I didn't come in here like that. I came in here exactly as I was, right? Scared to death. I'm gonna tell you a little quick story about love in here. I joined my home group and they gave me a coffee commitment. And there was 4 old timers in our home group and they pretty much they called the shots, right? With the commitments and all that, right? And so I signed the book and I put my sobriety date in it. And Herb B looked at me and said, we don't want your autograph, we want your service. Said, here's the keys to the coffee locker. Next week we want you here at 6 o'clock. This was an 8:30 Friday night meeting. 6 o'clock to make the coffee, set up the tables and chairs and put out the literature. I looked at Herb like he had 3 heads. I said, man, how long am I have to do that? He looked at me and grinned and he said, we'll get back to you. And so there was so I got a commitment, right? And my sponsor told me I had to get a commitment. So I got a commitment, but there's a small problem with my commitment. Stay with me. I don't know how to make coffee. And I'm not going to tell you that I don't know how to make coffee because I'm brand new. And what I think of me is based on what I think of you. I'm all outside. I ain't got nothing inside. And that didn't change just because I walked up in here. So I spent an entire week with no sleep. I'm laying there staring at the ceiling, coffee. I'm at work. I was working at Ford Motor Company. We're building cars, right? And I'm picturing people drinking the coffee and dying. I'm going to kill the whole meal. I was out of my mind for 6 days over this coffee thing, right? So finally, Friday comes at 6 o'clock. I went over to the church. I came in, and there they were. That's them 4 old guys. And I thought to myself, they don't trust me. Of course they didn't trust me. I wasn't trustworthy. And I came in, I set up the tables and chairs. This was a big meeting, about 250 people. It's a speaker meeting. And we had 300 cup coffee makers. So I set up the tables and chairs. I slowly put out the literature. And now it's coffee time. So I get out the coffee maker. On the inside of it, there's a number 100 and a line. I went to college. My mother used to say, this is the only boy that I know that got a college degree and no education, but I got enough education to know how much water to put in there, 100 and a line. So I put the water in there, and then at the moment of truth, I picked up the basket. And Herb is sitting at the end of the table. He said, "They can't come over here." So I walk over there with the basket in my hand, right? He said, "I don't know about you, Kent." He said, "But when I make a 100 cupper, I like to put the coffee right about to that line in the basket." He said, "How do you do it?" I said, "I do it just like that, Herb," right? Here's the moral of the story. Herb knew I didn't know how to make coffee, man. Herb knew I didn't know how to make. I'm going to tell you what else Herb knew. Herb knew I wasn't going to tell them I didn't. Is everybody following me? Herb did not make me feel less than. Herb did not make me feel stupid. Right? Is that what's happening? Am I doing that for new people in AA? I come from praying folks. I come from a praying family. My mother's mother and father and my father's father lived with us when we grew up. And you could walk through our house every morning when we got up for school. And you could walk by and their bedroom doors were open. And you would see my grandmother and my grandfather in their room on their knees beside the bed. And if you walk down to the next room, you would see my grandfather, my daddy's daddy, on his knees beside the bed. I come from praying people. I believe that's why I'm here. I believe in the power of prayer. But I'm a kid, right? They're praying. So we go to church. I go to a praying church. Seriously, a prayer-based church. Went to prayer meeting on Wednesday night. Praying. Okay? But I'm a kid. As a kid, what am I concerned of? What you think about me. What am I concerned with? Girls, popularity, sports. I'm a kid. I'm not thinking about this kind of stuff, right? But I had a family that saw to it that foundation was given us, right? That's what we had. My first real encounter with prayer on a sincere level, 13 years old, my older brother suffered a head injury in a football scrimmage. It was on a Saturday. And up to this time, my life, I had the kind of mom and daddy that saw to it that we had everything in our lives that was denied them when they grew up. My parents were active in the community. My parents helped other people. To this day, in Sandusky, Ohio, I am known as Pete and Evelyn's boy. To this day. Ain't you Pete and Evelyn's boy? Yes, ma'am. So up to this day, I'm golden. My life is great. Happy, right? I'm up in my head a lot, you know. I do feel less than. I am scared of everything, right? But I got my brother. Right? I'm good. And the phone rang. So he was hurt. They needed to move him. My mother was in Chicago. My mother worked for Chrysler. She was in Chicago on Chrysler business. My father was working at General Motors. He was at the plant. And it was the trainer. And he's like, "Your brother hurt, we got to move him." I said, "Move him. Just move him. I get a hold of my mom and daddy, do what you got to do." So make a long story short, 9 hours of brain surgery that Monday. But that Saturday, I started praying. Because it was all I knew how to do. It was what I was taught to do. I started praying. And I just asked God to let him be okay. Let him come home. Okay. He ain't come home. I did not blame God for this. I did not turn my back on God for this. Okay? I want to explain something to you. We're going in step 11. I developed an attitude about prayer. They told me God answers prayer, but in my head I said, no, he don't. No, he don't. I was 13. I didn't have the spiritual maturity or understanding to know that he did answer it. Because I know Brian okay. I know that now. So off I go. Prayer from that point on for me, and we talk, what do we call them in here? Foxhole prayers, right? When I'm in trouble, right? I ask God for help, right? I don't seem to be able to, when I died in 1984, I had a heart attack and I died as a direct result of the use of alcohol and some of its cousins. And when I'm in the cardiac unit, and I got tears rolling down my face, and I'm like, God, if you let me live, I will never drink again. And I've never said a more sincere prayer in my life. God, if you let me live, I'll never drink again. I spent 48 hours in the cardiac unit. They said that I was okay, that my heartbeat was strong. They moved me to a regular hospital room. Here's the thought that came to me when I got in a regular hospital room. Whoo, that was close. But I'm all right now, right? This calls for a celebration, baby. I'm 2 hours out of the cardiac unit and drunk. I didn't understand alcoholism. I didn't understand powerlessness. If I had the power to quit drinking on my own, I'd never come to AA. Why should I? Right? So then I developed kind of this attitude like, God, God don't do nothing for people like me. Like, I felt like I had played with God. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Like, I done played with God. God ain't gonna do nothing for me. I am on my own. I call my own shots. Then, you get into that I'm this self-made man thing, right, and all this. But you scare me bad enough, I get to praying. Put me in a jail cell, you see some serious praying. But that's the extent of it, right? Let me explain something to you. I knew about God. You can't be raised the way I was. I probably had a better upbringing than people to go to seminary. My mother was the president of Ohio Baptist Women's Convention. All them famous people you see on TV and civil rights and religion, and people been in my house. My mother was a power. I was around that my whole life. I knew all about God. But I had no relationship with him. Knowing about God and knowing God is two different things. Several people have talked up here. I finally crashed and burned as we do, and I had that moment of clarity, which I believe I was prayed in here. There was a man at home who used to say that that's the moment when God paralyzes the liar in you long enough for you to see the truth. I'm in the parking lot of a bar, the old pump line. They just tore the pump lines down, and the town is still in mourning. But I was in the parking lot of the Pump Lounge, and I had a moment of clarity, and it was a real simple one. I got a liver distended out to here. I don't take baths or showers. I don't even want to get into, but I'm at that place, right? And I had this moment, and it's like, Ken, if you don't stop drinking, you're going to die, and you better get some help because you can't do it by yourself, and you better do it now because you're running out of time. Out of nowhere, and I believe I was prayed in here. I knew nothing of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know a single solitary human being. I knew nothing of alcoholism. I believed that everything that was going on in my life was your fault. I had properly assigned blame for every problem that I had. I am so full of me, I can't even, this is the kind of kid I am. I'm growing up, I got a curfew, I come home, my parents are up because I never make my curfew. My curfew's 1 a.m., I come rolling in there at 2:30. I'm 16 years old. And this is what I say to my parents: go to bed. What is wrong with you people? What y'all doing sitting up here this time of night? Y'all go somewhere. I ain't sitting up here waiting on y'all. I can't even comprehend the love of a parent for a child. I can't even see you. This is where I'm at. This spiritual malady that we talk about, selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our problem. So I ended up in treatment, I ended up in AA. I do the don't drink, go to meetings, and don't do nothing else for 3 months. 2 months sober, I picked up a T-bar at work and tried to kill a guy. That's what I look like. 2 months abstinent, no steps, no nothing. And a guy came up behind me and took it out of my hand. I sponsor him today. True story. And if he hadn't done it, I'd have killed that guy. That's what I look like 2 months. I didn't get better when I stopped drinking. And a guy came up to me after that and said, for God's sake, go take a drink before you kill somebody in here. And I'm going to 3 meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous a day. I work midnights, I went to morning meeting, I went to afternoon meeting, I went to night meeting every day, and on the weekends, 4, 5, 6 meetings. I stopped counting at 200 and I was not 3 months sober. I'm sitting up under y'all every single day and dying right in front of you, and people saw it. So 3 months sober, I'm in the parking lot of another bar and I'm going to drink, and I asked God for help. First sincere prayer, I said 3 months in AA. Serenity prayer and the Lord's prayer, that's it. I ain't said nothing else. I have no sponsor. I have no home. I treated AA like a cigarette smoking, donut dunking, coffee clutch. And I asked for help. And I got a sponsor. Actually, I got two, Bill F. and Lorraine and Ken B. in Cleveland. Bill died 53 years sober. Kenny is in bad health right now, and he's 47 years sober. I had a lot of help. Kenny's sponsor was Neil C. Neil's sponsor was the guy with the funny haircut. I was giving Alcoholics Anonymous straight from the hip. My first sponsor used to say, read the black print on the white page in the blue book and do what it says. So we get into these steps. We got to the chapter, we agnostics. And right, doctor's opinion, Bill's story, there is a solution, more about alcoholism. I'm thinking whoever wrote this has been following me around. I'm not a guy that came in here, I was done. I identified with the thinking, with the drinking, with the, all of that. I didn't have no issue with that. We got to the chapter, we agnostics. I told Bill, we can skip that one. He said, really, why? I said, because I ain't agnostic, I'm Baptist. His response to me was this. He said, I beg to differ. He said, what you are, big shot, is a functioning agnostic. Well, I was offended by that. I had no idea what it meant, but I was offended by it. I said to him, I said, what is a functioning agnostic? And he looked me in the eye and he said, that's a person who professes to believe in God, but who lives their life like there ain't one. Bam. How many times am I at today? How many times am I at today? So he said, this is what I want you to do. I want you to take everything you think you know and set it to the side. Let's read this book and let's do what it says. If it says go somewhere, we're going to go somewhere. If it says write something down, we're going to write it down. If it says say a prayer, we're going to say a prayer. And let's see what happens, Kent. Okay? I'm not going through the steps. It's been done far beyond my capability here this weekend. What I want to tell you is this. By the time we got to step 10, before I came to you guys, my nickname was Poison. And I ain't proud of that. It's not a nice thing to call a human being. My mother said I had the most negative aura of any human being that she ever met. She said, when you walk into a room, the lights dim. I saw no purpose in life. I saw no purpose in living. I lived in that place that some of y'all come from. Cold-blooded, cold-hearted indifference. Indifferent to me, indifferent to you, indifferent to life. And I believe that's as far away from God as a human being with a life and a soul and the promise of life can get. There's been a lot of talk about Chamberlain and separation. I mean, dude, I walked the earth alone. And I was surrounded by people the entire time. I walked the earth alone. The guys that I drank with were guys that I went to preschool with. I'd known all my life. I ain't know them, they didn't know me, because people like us don't let people know them. What I let you see is what I want you to see so that I can get you to see me the way I want you to see me. Somebody was talking about all these personalities yesterday. There was a church Kent, a school Kent. There was a Kent at home. There's a basketball Kent. I'm this chameleon, right? My first sponsor used to call me the stage character. The stage character. Don't even know who I am, right? And so we embark on this journey with the steps, and I had the privilege of being taken through this deal with some people that had been around here for a long, long time. And wrote the inventory, right? Started looking at 6 and 7, right? Willing to change in 6, right? I mean, they took me. I understood what the 6-step prayer was. You hear a lot of talk about that one, right? Because I tell my sponsees all the time, they're like, I'm saying the 7-step prayer every day. I can't stop doing it. And I say, you saying the 7-step prayer on the 6-step issue. You ain't willing. What does it say in step 6? If we are not willing, we ask until it comes, right? It's just the black print, white page, blue book, right? And I had to move back into my mom and dad's house. And so I'm with mom and dad, and I had not had a conversation with my mother since I was 13 years old. When I moved back in their house, I was 32 years old. And I worked midnights, and my dad worked afternoons, so I would get up when he went to work. And I got up, and I came in there, and my mom was in her chair watching TV. And I said, good afternoon, Mom. How's your day? And her mouth just fell open. The only thing I had said to my mother from the age of 13 to 32 was, give me this, give me that, I need this, I need that. So all this stuff is happening in my life. I'm starting to see possibilities. I was a guy I had a college degree. I worked in a factory. And I started to see some possibilities. You know, they came to me at work in a place where I had been given 28 days off twice. The only reason I had a job was United Auto Workers Union of America. Trust me. That's the only reason that I was employed. Hey, would you take a supervisor's job for the summer? True story. Well, things wasn't looking real good at Ford at that time. I thought, that'll look good on my resume. So I take this job, this temporary supervisor's job. It's supposed to be summer coverage for vacations. I had that job for 1 month. They called me on the phone in the office and said, can't come up to HR. You know the first thing I thought, don't you? Failed again, man. Failed again. I can't do nothing. I can't do nothing. And I walked into that room, and there's this whole table of people, and the head of HR is a man named Gary, looked at me, and he said, Kent, he said, you've been doing this for 30 days, but it seemed to us like you've been doing this all your life. We don't want no 3 months. We want you to keep this. And he pushed a piece of paper at me, and he said, that's what we'll pay you. And I looked at it, and I said, give me a pen. Right? And then he said, you know, if you want to go back to school and get an advanced degree, we'll pay for that. All this stuff is happening in my life, man. But here's the real thing. I am shoulder deep in Alcoholics Anonymous. I am shoulder deep. I am sponsoring like crazy. I'm institutional committee chair for North Central and Ohio. Dude, we're doing weekend. We used to rent out camps in Central Ohio down there by Amish country. These big Christian camps. You get 200 people down there. And we'd go to all these treatment centers, Cleveland, Toledo, bring them down there, and then big book them half to death for 3 days. Then we had 200 treatment people. Do you know what it's like to have 200 treatment people somewhere out in the woods? Yeah. I don't have to tell you, do I? Right? It was crazy. Dude, it was just, I was alive. I was alive. I was seeing people differently. My first sponsor said to me, he said, you know how I knew you was getting better? This is when he was in hospice. I said, no, Bill, how did you know I was getting better? He said, because when you was calling me, you wasn't calling me about your nonsense. You was calling me about your sponsees. You're starting to put other people, you're starting to think about other people instead of yourself. So at step 10, and Zach read it for us, right? Just made conscious contact. I'm waking up. But now what? Step 11, right? Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him. Praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Okay, so now, I think it was Emmett Fox or somebody who said, anyone who doesn't have time for prayer and meditation will have plenty of time for sickness and trouble. Right? Because the ego is resilient, man. It wakes up every single day and it starts talking to me. Right? Starts talking to me. So when I look at the text, right, it says, when we retire at night. So I used to think that that was the 10th step. Right? Everybody say, I did my 10th step before I went to bed, right? Well, I go to meetings, I listen, I'm like a parrot at home, right? You know. My sponsor said to me, what book are you reading? When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. This is step 11, okay? So why do we need to constructively review our day? Well, number one, because I don't do the 10th step perfectly. I miss stuff. Sometimes I intentionally turn my head, right? You ever do this? They had it coming. I justify it, right? They had it coming, right? Sometime I catch myself in 10, right? But a lot of time, right? I love how Bob talked about the safety nets on the side of the skyscrapers, right? If I drop something off there, by the time that thing hits the sidewalk, it's a missile. So I need that. Retire at night. And there's a question in there that my first sponsor pointed to me, and he told me it was the operative question, because it's really the same questions that we had in step 10, right? Were we kind and loving toward all? He said, Kent, that is the litmus test. He said, because if you was kind and loving toward all, pretty much the rest of this stuff's going to fall into place, wasn't it? I wouldn't be resentful and dishonest, and right? If I'm kind and loving toward, were we kind and loving toward all? Our true purpose is to fit ourselves to be a maximum service to God and the people around us. I gotta stay straight with what this is. Remind the prospect that his recovery is not dependent upon people, it is dependent upon his relationship with God. I made a decision in the third step to do what? Not drink. I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. That's how I'm not going to drink. And something's going to happen in me. I take actions outside of me toward which are born in here. When I started thinking, like, man, I wonder what prisons we could take a big book meeting into, right? The maximum security prison in Ohio. It used to be the one where they did, where they filmed Shawshank Redemption. Bad place. Death row was in there, bad place. Word got to me that they had one big book in the library, and they had a clipboard with paper that thick on it. That was the waiting list to get that big book, right? And I'm at work, and I'm not at work thinking about what you think about me. I'm at work thinking, right? Attitude and outlook change, right? The way I'm not the same, but it's coming from in here. It's born from in here, not here. Because I can take altruistic actions completely from here, right? That are simply, you could look at me and say, oh my God, what a servant he is, right? What a son, right? What a boyfriend, right? Kind and love. Only reason I'm doing it is so you go tell people how good I am. Anybody get it? It's not born of spirit, it's born of this. I made a decision. What is the third step decision? To turn my will and my life over to the care of God. And I got plenty of evidence as to why I need to do that. Because my life run on my will don't work. The story of my life is the story of my relationship with God. The story of my life is the story of my relationship with God. Whatever my life looked like at any moment. So when we retire at night, right, I'm going to constructively review my day, not punitively. Because now, right, my spirit's awake. I know I'm not perfect. I know I'm never going to be perfect. The book says, and it's crazy because when I was new, I beat myself up for not being perfect. Anybody in here ever do that? Right? After the book say, we seek spiritual progress, not spiritual perfection. We are not saints. No one among us has been able to place perfect. We read this at meetings and then I go home and beat myself up because I wasn't perfect today, right? So there comes a point in this thing when you realize your humanness, right? But I'd rather have guys too far that way than too far the other way. That's the way I always say, right? But so I start looking at this at night, constructively review my day. And what does that do for me? And why is it a part of Step 11? Tell you why. And Jennifer alluded to it yesterday. I want to clear the table for the morning so that I am able to receive, okay? I don't want to wake up with any baggage from yesterday, right? Any unresolved stuff from yesterday. If I need to call Bob and talk to Bob about it, I'll do that. I need to go make an amend, I'll do that, right? But I want to keep, I can't receive when I'm blocked. I cannot receive when I'm blocked. So when I awaken in the morning, right, we're ready to let God set the table for the day. I'm just going to share this about me, and I don't know why it is. When I wake up in the morning, it's like somebody flips a switch in my head and everything that I'm worried about, it could scare me, comes on as soon as I wake up. Oh, it's going to be a meeting today. You're going to look stupid. Wonder what's going to happen with that deal over there. How's the kids? Right? My head just like, whoa. Okay. None of that is real. None of it's real. Okay, Ken. So let's get quiet, right? The funny thing is, like a lot of folk, when I saw meditation when I was new, first thing I thought was, I wonder if there's a store here in town that sells those robes and those rugs, right? I know where to get incense, right? But I wonder, right? Because that's what I don't know nothing about meditation, right? So I said that to my sponsor, and he looked at me and he said, how about we read the black print on the white page in the blue book and do what it says? You know, our program doesn't ask us to do anything that they don't give us, right? All the tools we need to do it, right? So let's get quiet. Let's not, and here again, from last night and from yesterday, right? And from our retire at night, right? I've got resolution to all that stuff. I'm not dragging yesterday in here, right? And we've already closed the door on all the fictional stuff that we're worrying about down here. This is where living this thing one day, one moment at a time. Don't struggle, we take it easy, right? I like how the text talks about, it uses stuff like after a while, you know, it's not instantaneous. I'm a instant gratification guy. Like I want direct, boom, right, like immediately. No. There was a guy that used to sit next to me down at the club at home. His name was Al P. He was an attorney, a great speaker in AA. I think I still got him on a cassette tape. Al got sober in the early 50s. He was an attorney. He had orange hair that went straight up like this, kind of like Kramer. Remember Kramer? And he wore sandals and black socks. I mean, really, like it's dude probably had enough money to buy this hotel, right? But Al used to sit next to me at the meeting, and he'd say, "Hey, Kent, that Step11 thing?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, Al." He'd go, "Practice, practice, practice." I say, "Then what, Al?" He'd go, "Practice, practice, practice. Read, quiet, practice." I remember Al. He died when I was a year sober. I went to see him in the hospital before he died. Practice, practice, practice. Then it tells us to read a little something. Does everybody like you read a little something in the morning, right? And when I was new, I had like this stack, right? My mom, and I want you guys to know something. This, what we're talking about here, all this stuff went on in my house. My grandmother used to get in her rocking chair in the morning and close her eyes and rock. And I said, "Mama, what you doing?" She said, "I'm talking to Jesus, baby." This is not new, right? In Akron, Ann Smith. Bill Wilson comes to Akron. Right? Been hanging around the Oxford group for 6 months, fighting to drink in Akron, right? Has stayed sober through helpfulness, trying to be helpful to others. Dr. Bob going to Oxford group and reading everything they say, getting drunk every night. Who sat him down and taught him how to do this? Ann Smith. We just entered Ann Smith country. Let me tell you something. Bill Wilson said it later. Look at the first 300-400 members of Alcoholics Anonymous and where they lived. And look at the percentage that stayed sober in Akron and Cleveland versus New York. And Bill Wilson himself said the reason that happened, we know now, is that they continued to emphasize the morning prayer and meditation, and we did not. Like, I'm a real simple guy. I noticed that people who actually, to the best of their ability, do what this book says, do better than people that don't. I'm not like this real deep. People who do this do better than people who don't. They seem happier, have more useful, purposeful lives, right? They're the kind of people you look at and like, wow, man, I wish I could do that stuff, right? My friend Al McCauley said, hey, it's simple, man. It's monkey see, monkey do. Just make sure you follow the right monkey. Right? Talking about this book, these steps, these traditions, these concepts. Like follow. Don't have to make nothing up in here. So I take the quiet time and I have some reading. I'll read like only one or two things now, that's it. Because my mind, I want it to be something I can reflect on and then see what God gonna do with this as we go through the day. That's fun to me. I love that because invariably it happens. Memorize some prayers and some other things that I can memorize. Meditation for me does not end in the morning when I'm done. It's all day long. It's all day long. Most human beings that I've met meditate all day long. Question is, what do you meditate on? What is worry? Worry is to meditate on fear. That is called worry. Okay? So I don't want to meditate on fear. When my mind turns to the fear thing, financial insecurity always been a big one with me. Even when I got money, don't matter, right? Mind go there, right? I have some things. A lot of them were things that my mom taught me that I will immediately turn and begin to recite. And it will go away. Things that are in the book. I'll quote stuff in my mind, read stuff in my mind out of the book, right? Gonna know if it's all right, Kent, right? Not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door, right? I will turn my thinking. What does our book tell us? The problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in his body. All action is born in thought. We all know that, right? So what did they describe a spiritual awakening as? A personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism. It starts up here. It starts up here. So when it comes during the day, I turn to God. I don't sit there and stew in it for the rest of the day, usually. Sometimes I do. If you scare me bad enough, if it's something that really scares, I'm on Bob. I'm scared. Okay? God has given me everything that I need to live a happy life, to be free, to be useful to you. I don't know, a lot of this got to do with getting older, but I'm getting older now. And you start learning what's really important. You start learning what's really important. I was young in AA. I was working at Ford, flipping Lincolns every 2 years, alligators and lizards, doing that thing, man, sober, right? Shoot, man, I could put my robe on now and come to meeting. I don't care, man. I don't care. Hey, man, my family is good. My kids good. I got food to eat. I got some place to stay. And I got a purpose in my life. And I got a purpose, and I want to grow closer to this power. Each day. Because they told me when you come in here, you either going or growing. Your feet are always moving in here. And somebody said it over the weekend. There's people leaving and they ain't telling us. And a lot of them don't even know it themselves. On their way out of here. Okay? It then says we conclude the period of meditation with a prayer, right? And see, I didn't know how to pray. I mean, I told you, I was taught those things when I was young, but I was just a kid then, wasn't paying attention. I knew the foxhole prayer, God, get me out this mess. But I want to know how to pray, right? So what I do now, in the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, When you get to step 3, a pattern emerges of prayer and actions. You get your 3rd step, prayer. We get in the 4th step, right? We got a prayer in the resentment section, right? As we begin to look at things from an entirely different angle, right? We got prayer for fear, right? We got prayer for our sex and relationship conduct, right? We got the 6-step prayer, 7-step prayer. There's a prayer in the 8th step. It's a prayer. I'm praying all day. I'm talking to God all day long. All day long. Hey, God, you see that? What should I do? Right? I was in Tampa, speaking at the Tampa Roundup, probably 15 years ago. All right, Tampa. And our friend Sandy was there, and I had some problems at work. And it was just, I had talked to Ralph about it. Ralph told me, Ralph was like, Kent, right now, this minute, Ralph was like, is it okay? Is it all right now? Not 2 weeks from now. Is it all right now, Kent? Kids all right, the girls all right. I was like, yeah, Ralph. And Ralph told me this. He said, if you could stay right now, it'll always be all right. And that worked for about a half hour. So I'm down in Tampa, and I guess I don't hide things well. I spoke at like 10 o'clock on Saturday morning. And so they had a thank you line, everybody left, and Sandy was sitting by himself over there going like this. Right, so I went over there and sat down, and he did like he always do, you know how you pat you on your knee. He said, what's the matter, Kent? And I went, boom, right, and just, the whole thing just comes out. And this is what he said to me. He says, have you asked God for help with this? I said, no. He smiled at me and got up and he patted me on the shoulder. He said, I bet you didn't get none either, did you? And walked away, right? Dude, I get it. I get it, man. Remind the prospect that his recovery is not dependent upon people. It is dependent upon his relationship with God. People are the vehicle in which God works in my life. But it is him working in and through them. Relationship. So what we're talking about in 11 is relationship building. We're talking about strengthening and building this relationship with God as we understand him. What is the most essential component of a relationship? Look it up on the internet. Communication. It's communication. Think about the relationships that you have. What makes them special? What makes them strong? Transparency is another one, isn't it? Okay. Trust is another one. Okay. Belief in is another one. Right? And so I had this relationship with this God who loves me no matter what. God, I don't have to earn it. The things that I do are not to earn God's love. God already loved me. It's so that I can access his grace. I used to say, when I can get good, I'm going to get with God. If I could get good, I wouldn't need God. I need to get with God so I can get good. I had a cart in front of the horse. If I could fix me, see steps 6 and 7, I wouldn't need God. So we concluded with a prayer, right? Asking God, guide us and direct us, show what we need to do as we go through the day. So we don't have to ask for anything for ourselves unless it will be of benefit to others. So y'all taught me how to pray. That's a beautiful thing about AA. Not many people I come here I know have strong prayer lives, because that's what I'm talking about, is a prayer life, right? So they give them to us. They give them to us. How many times in this book does it say, we ask God? How many times? Right? And so I go through my day. I would love to be able to stand here and say that, like I said earlier, like I believe all the time. I trust God all the time. No, I don't. No, I don't. But because of what you've given me, I have the tools today to recognize and rectify those situations. I've made progress here. I'm better than I used to be. I hope I'm better today than I was yesterday. Don't know. But I'm better than what I used to be. I'm done beating myself up for being a human being. I don't know how many sunrises and sunsets I got left, but I'm going to tell you something right now. I want to enjoy them. I want to enjoy them with you. I want to enjoy them with my family. I want to enjoy life. I want to enjoy life. Step 11. Old timer at home used to say, how can you have a good day if you don't start it right? How can you have a good day if you don't start it right? The story of my life is the story of my relationship with God. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry it out. So now I'm living in the square Jennifer talked about. I'm in the day. All the power that I need is in the day. I'm awake. I'm awake. And now I'm going to get down from here and let Don tell us what we do when we wake up. God bless you. Thank you.